The sun hung low over the endless desert, turning the sky a soft orange as the cowboy made his slow journey across the open land. He rode alone, with nothing but the sound of his horse's steady steps and the faint jingle of the saddle to keep him company. The land around him looked like it went on forever flat, dry, and empty. But he didn't mind. He had spent years traveling these trails, and silence was something he had learned to live with. Dot the cowboy wasn't in a hurry. He guided his horse with a light touch, keeping an eye on the small herd of cattle that followed behind him. They were calm today, which was good. Some days they acted wild for no reason, making the whole trip twice as hard. But this day was quiet. Still, the cowboy felt something strange in the air, something he couldn't explain. He wasn't the kind of man who got nervous, but even he could tell when the desert felt different. The wind carried a sharp smell he didn't recognize. It wasn't smoke from a campfire, and it wasn't from an animal. It was something metallic, something hot, something that didn't belong in the Old West. His horse paused every few minutes, ears twitching, like it was hearing something the cowboy couldn't. Even the cattle seemed uneasy, occasionally lifting their heads to look around. The cowboy kept telling himself it was nothing, just the wind, just a long day. But deep down, he knew better. Years on the trail had taught him to trust his instincts. He reached the edge of a rocky path, the ground turning uneven and sharp. Strange black marks covered the stones. They didn't look like burn marks from a wildfire, and they didn't look like anything a person could make. They were deeper, like something extremely hot had scraped across the rock. The cowboy dismounted and crouched to inspect one of the marks. It felt warm to the touch, too warm for something that should have cooled hours ago. His horse snorted, pulling back on the reins. "Easy," the cowboy whispered, gently rubbing its neck, but the horse didn't calm down. Its eyes were wide, and it kept staring at the rocks ahead like something dangerous was waiting just beyond the ridge. The cowboy stood up slowly, dusting off his hands. He scanned the horizon. Nothing moved. No rider, no bandits, no wild animals, just the fading sunset. But the wind carried a faint tremble, almost like the distant echo of a roar too soft to be real, yet too clear to ignore. Dot by now, the cowboy wished he had camped earlier. But turning back wasn't an option. He had to move forward, even if. The air felt heavier with every step. He mounted the horse again and clicked his tongue softly, guiding it up the rocky slope. The horse hesitated, but obeyed Dot when he reached the top. He stopped and looked out over the land below. That's when he saw something he had never seen before. A long, deep trench cut across the desert floor below him, as if something massive had crash-landed. The sand around it was melted into glassy streaks. The trench was fresh. Whatever made it had come down hard and recently. The cowboy's heart started to beat a little faster. He wasn't someone who scared easily, but he wasn't foolish either. Whatever caused that mark wasn't something normal. He tapped his horse gently, starting down the slope. The cattle behind him were slow, confused, and anxious, letting out low, uneasy calls. He kept them close, steering them around the trench. The melted sand still radiated warmth when he rode past it. That same metallic smell grew stronger now, thick in the air. Something had happened here, something big. Dot. As he followed the trail, the light faded more and more. Shadows stretched long, and the sky turned from orange to deep red. There was still enough daylight for him to see the land clearly, but a part of him wished it wasn't so dark. He felt eyes on him, watching from somewhere he couldn't see. Cowboy tugged on the reins and slowed his horse. He listened carefully. The wind no longer sounded empty. It carried something else, a faint, shaky breathing, almost like someone struggling. It wasn't human. It was too deep to belong to a person, too rough, too pained. His horse tried to turn around, but he tightened his grip just enough to keep it steady. "Stay with me," he murmured. His voice stayed calm, but inside he felt a growing worry. He didn't like mysteries, especially ones that made the animals act like this. Animals had sharp senses. If they were afraid, there was a good reason. He nudged the horse forward again, moving slowly and carefully. The breathing sound grew louder, mixed with a soft, tired rumble he had never heard before. It wasn't the growl of a cougar or the hiss of a snake. This was something out of place, something foreign to Earth itself. The cowboy finally stopped when he reached the bottom of a small dip in the land. The air here felt thicker, warmer. Then, as he peered ahead, he saw movement behind a cluster of boulders. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but no, something really was there. Something big. He placed a hand on the rifle, mounted beside his saddle, not to attack, but because he didn't know what else to expect. He wasn't the kind of man who fired first. He always believed every creature deserved a chance. But he had. To be ready. The thing behind the rocks shifted again, this time letting out a low, heartbreaking sound, almost like a cry. The cowboy froze. That sound didn't feel dangerous. It felt lonely, lost. Hurt. He gently dismounted, keeping his movements slow so the creature wouldn't feel threatened. His horse backed away, pulling against the reins he had wrapped around. A stone. The cowboy let the horse put distance between them. He kept his eyes on the rocks, studying every corner of the shadows. Then he stepped closer. The air grew hotter. A strange smell was strongest here. His boots crunched quietly against the sand. His breathing sounded too loud in his own ears. And then he saw her. The creature lifted her head from behind the rocks, revealing a long neck covered in shimmering scales that changed color in the fading light. She had bright, glowing eyes, large, tired, and full of fear. Her body rose slightly, revealing wings folded tightly against her sides. She looked like a creature from stories, from legends, from worlds far beyond the one he knew. She was a dragon, but not the kind from old fairy tales. She looked like something born under a different sky, shaped by a different universe. She wasn't angry. She wasn't growling. She wasn't threatening him. She looked scared, her eyes locked onto his. And in that moment, the cowboy understood one thing clearly. She wasn't here by choice. She wasn't looking for a fight. She was lost, alone, possibly crash-landed, and desperately searching for someone who might help her. The cowboy rested his hand slowly on his belt, making sure she didn't think he was reaching for a weapon. He spoke softly, even though he knew she wouldn't understand his words. "Easy now. I won't hurt you." The dragon let out another sound, a deep, trembling exhale, like she was relieved someone had finally found her. She shifted her position and tried to lift herself higher, but her legs shook and she stumbled forward slightly. She was weak, hurt, exhausted. The cowboy felt his fear fade into something else, concern. He had seen wounded animals before. He had seen creatures on the brink of giving up, and the dragon in front of him, no matter how strange or otherworldly, looked exactly like one of them. She needed help, but she also had something urgent she was trying to communicate. Her eyes kept darting behind her, toward the land beyond the rocks. She made soft, quick sounds, shaking her head and glancing at him again, almost like she wanted him to follow her. She wasn't threatening him, she was pleading. The cowboy felt his chest tighten. He didn't know what he was stepping into. He didn't know what waited behind those rocks, or what danger he might find. But he could tell one thing: this creature wasn't his enemy. She was alone, frightened, and pushing herself just to get his attention. Whatever she wanted to show him must have been important. The wind shifted again, and he smelled fresh smoke. Not from firewood, not from a camp. This smoke smelled like burning metal. The dragon's eyes widened, and she let out a soft but urgent rumble. She needed him to follow. And despite everything, the fear, the mystery, the danger, he took a slow breath and stepped closer. Whatever this was, it had already begun. The cowboy stood there for a long moment, staring at the strange creature that had lifted her head from behind the rocks. He didn't move too fast, didn't speak too loud, didn't do anything that might scare her. The desert around them had grown quiet, almost too quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The warm wind brushed against his face, carrying that same metallic, unfamiliar smell he had noticed earlier. It wasn't fading. It was getting stronger. The dragon watched him with wide, glowing eyes. They weren't the eyes of a monster. They were the eyes of someone frightened, lost, unsure of what to do next. She made a soft, low sound that almost felt like she was calling him, not threatening him, not warning him, calling him, asking him for something without words. The cowboy swallowed and stepped a little closer, his boots crunching softly in the sand. Every move he made was slow and careful. His heart beat steadily, not because he wasn't scared, but because he had learned long ago that panic never helped anything. Fear was normal. Calmness was a choice. The dragon lifted her head a little, higher, though it seemed to take effort. Her wings twitched weakly at her sides, one of them dragging across the ground like it was injured. She shifted her weight and let out a small, pained sound. For a moment, the cowboy forgot everything strange about the situation. He only saw a wounded creature trying to stay strong. He held out a hand slightly, palm open, to show he meant no harm. She watched his hand carefully, but didn't react with fear. Instead, she glanced behind her again, toward the cluster of rocks she had come from. She made another soft rumble, quicker this time, more urgent. Then she looked back at him, as if trying to make sure he understood. "You want me to follow?" He whispered. Of course, she couldn't reply with words, but something in her expression told him he was right. She shifted again, trying to stand taller. Her legs trembled, and she looked almost ashamed of her weakness. But she held her ground and kept making those small signals. The cowboy slowly circled around her, trying to see what she kept looking at behind the rocks. His horse tried to pull farther away, snorting nervously and stomping the ground. He let the reins stay loose so the animal didn't panic. But he didn't take his eyes off the dragon. As he stepped closer to the rocks, the desert air grew even warmer. The smell of burned metal filled his nose. He could hear something else, too faint, muffled, like the low hum of a machine that wasn't working properly. The sound didn't belong in the desert. Nothing natural made a noise like that. He stopped when he reached the edge of the rocks and looked back toward the dragon. She nodded her head slightly, a movement so human-like it startled him, but it was clearly a sign. She wanted him to go on. With a careful breath, he turned and stepped between the rocks. For a moment, the shadows hid everything. The rocks formed a narrow path, blocking the light of the setting sun. The cowboy moved slowly, letting his eyes adjust. The hum grew louder. It had a strange rhythm to it, almost like breathing, but mechanical and strained. And the path opened, and he saw it. A deep crater tore into the desert floor, surrounded by melted sand and blackened earth. At the center lay a large metallic shape, half buried, half crushed. The metal was bent, twisted, and glowing faintly in places where the heat hadn't fully escaped. Sparks flickered along its surface like dying fireflies. The cowboy stared at it, stunned. He had never seen anything like it. No wagon, no machine, no tool from any blacksmith could ever be shaped that way. It was smooth, curved with lines and patterns that made no sense to human craftsmanship. The thing looked like it had fallen from the sky. He took a cautious step closer. The air grew hotter the nearer he got. He could hear something inside the wreck, soft, faint, but alive. A small sound, almost like a whimper. The cowboy crouched, squinting through the cracked metal. Inside, he saw movement. Something curled. Up, shaking, smaller than the dragon outside, but shaped just like her. It was a young one, a baby dragon. Its wings were tiny, pressed close to its body. It was trapped under a collapsed piece of the metallic structure, too weak to free itself. The cowboy felt his breath catch. Suddenly, everything made sense. The marks on the rocks, the burned sand, the mother dragon's fear, her urgency, her strange attempts to push him forward. She wasn't trying to scare him earlier. She was begging him to help her child. He stood slowly and turned to look at her. She had followed him to the entrance of the rock path, but stopped there, too large to fit through. Her eyes met his, and there was nothing fierce in them, only worry, exhaustion, and hope. She made another soft sound, this time filled with emotion. Even without understanding her language, the cowboy knew exactly what she was saying. Dot. Please, Dot. He looked back at the wreck. The baby dragon let out another small cry, muffled and weak. It tried to move but couldn't. A heavy piece of metal trapped one of its wings and part of its tail. The cowboy wiped sweat from his forehead. The heat coming from the wreck burned against his skin. He knew he couldn't leave the creature like that. He also knew rescuing it wouldn't be easy. One wrong move and he might get burned or worse. But when he looked back at the mother dragon waiting behind him, trembling with anxiety, there was no doubt left in his mind. He had to try. He moved closer to the wreck and tapped a metal plank, lightly with his boot. It shifted a little, but the moment it moved, a burst of heat shot out, making him jump back. He blinked and rubbed his hands against his pants. All right, so he had to be careful, real careful. Hang on, he whispered, mostly to steady himself. I'll get you out. He circled the wreck, examining the damage. Most of it was too hot to touch, but a few areas had cooled enough for him to work with. He looked around. For anything he could use long pieces of broken metal, loose rocks, anything to give him leverage. He found a thick metal beam half buried in the sand. It was still warm, but not burning hot. He used both hands to pull it free, grunting as it came loose. The dragon inside let out another weak cry, and the mother outside responded with a loud, sharp call, full of worry. I hear you, the cowboy said under his breath. He wedged the beam under a heavy piece of the wreckage, planting his boots firmly in the sand. He leaned with all his strength, pushing down on the beam. At first, nothing happened. The metal didn't even budge. He clenched his jaw and pushed harder, muscles straining, breath growing heavier. Finally, with a loud crack, the piece of metal lifted just enough for the baby dragon to wiggle free. It crawled forward, limping, wings trembling. The cowboy held the beam as long as he could, giving the little creature time to move. The moment the baby cleared the debris, he let the beam drop and stepped back, panting. Sweat dripped from his neck. His arms trembled from the effort. Behind him, the mother dragon let out a deep, emotional sound, a mixture of relief and gratitude. Even though she couldn't reach into the wreck herself, she saw her child escape. The baby dragon limped toward the path, letting out tiny sounds as it searched for its mother. The cowboy guided it gently, making sure it didn't stumble. When they reached the entrance of the rocky passage, the mother dragon lowered her head, touching her snout to her child with such softness that the cowboy felt a tightness in his chest. It was a moment of pure, wordless connection between the two creatures. The cowboy stepped back, giving them space. He didn't want to interfere. The mother dragon wrapped one of her wings gently around the young one, checking for injuries. She lifted her head after a moment and turned her glowing eyes toward the cowboy. There was no fear now, no confusion. Only gratitude. She lowered her head deeply, bowing in a way that stunned him. It was a gesture almost respectful, something that didn't need explaining. The cowboy felt a strange warmth spread through him, not from the wreck, not from the desert heat, but from knowing he had done the right thing. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know where the dragons came from, or if more danger was coming. But for now, he knew one thing. He had earned their trust, and the night was far from over. The desert night had settled completely, the sun gone and leaving only a dark sky speckled with stars. The cowboy sat on a small rock, wiping the sweat and dust from his face. His horse grazed nearby, restless but calm, sensing that whatever had happened was over for now. The two dragons were just ahead, the mother circling her young in careful protective circles. Even from a distance, he could feel the tension in the air around them. Something about these creatures was completely unfamiliar, yet incredibly real. He watched the mother dragon nudge her baby gently, checking its wings and legs. She made low, soft rumbling sounds, which the cowboy assumed were comforting words of some kind. The baby tried to stretch one wing and hissed softly, and leaned against her side. The bond between them was clear, and it struck him how similar it felt to humans. Parental care, fear for a child, the need to protect, it was the same everywhere. Even across species he had never imagined existed. The cowboy rubbed his forehead, trying to make sense of what had just happened. For years, he had seen wild animals hurt, and had helped them when he could, but this was something completely different. This was a creature from a world that seemed impossible, yet here she was, alive, breathing, and depending on him. He had saved her child without even knowing it, and now she was watching him carefully, judging him, silently deciding if he was friend or foe. As he adjusted his coat, the mother dragon stepped closer to him. Her glowing eyes were steady, almost like she was studying every movement he made. The cowboy didn't move. He knew better than to make sudden gestures. He had learned that animals, even normal ones, could sense fear and hesitation. This was another species entirely, but the principle was the same. Show calm, show patience, and earn trust. The dragon tilted her head slightly and made a soft, pleading sound. The cowboy realized she wasn't just watching him anymore. She wanted him to follow. Again, she wasn't trying to threaten him. She wasn't trying to scare him. She was guiding him somewhere. He felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever she wanted him to see must have been important. He stood slowly, keeping his hands visible. His horse snorted nervously, but stayed near. The cowboy took a careful step toward the dragons. The mother stepped aside, letting the baby move ahead, but she didn't let him go far. Her wings twitched slightly, one of them brushing the sand. She was injured, yes, but she had enough strength to protect her young if she needed to. That strength alone made the cowboy respect her even more. The baby dragon took a few wobbly steps forward, then stumbled over a small rock. The cowboy caught it with a gentle hand before it fell. The mother let out a sharp, low sound. It wasn't anger. It was warning, cautioning him to treat her child carefully. The cowboy nodded, not because she could understand, but because he understood perfectly. "All right," he said softly. "I get it. We'll go together." The dragon made a small, almost approving sound and turned slightly, beckoning him to follow. The baby hesitated for a moment, then started moving again, guided by its mother's watchful eye. The cowboy fell into step behind them, careful not to crowd or frighten them. Every step he took, he was conscious of the desert floor, the rocks, the sand, and the faint heat still radiating from the crater. The moon had risen now, casting a soft silver light over the desert. The shadows stretched long and strange across the sand, making the dragon's glowing eyes look even more otherworldly. The cowboy kept his hand near his belt, not because he planned to use it, but because instincts didn't just disappear overnight. Danger could appear without warning. But he also felt something else, a strange sense of calm. The dragons weren't dangerous if treated carefully. That much was clear as they moved. He noticed something curious. The desert floor was scattered with small metallic fragments, tiny pieces, burnt and twisted, as if something had fallen from the sky and shattered. He picked up one carefully, holding it in his hand. It was warm, sharp at the edges, and unlike anything he had ever seen. It glinted in the moonlight. He glanced at the mother dragon. She watched him carefully, but didn't make any sudden movements. Her baby crawled forward, curious, sniffing the ground. The path ahead narrowed between two small hills. The dragon paused at the entrance, looking back at him. Her eyes seemed to ask if he was ready. He nodded, keeping his movements slow. The mother took the first step forward. Her wings slightly spread, then lowered herself so her body could pass easily through the narrow gap. The baby followed, and he stepped carefully behind them. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the strange metallic scent stronger than before. The cowboy sniffed it and frowned. He had smelled enough gunpowder, fire, and burning metal in his life, but this was different. Softer, heavier, like metal that had burned, but also breathed. The thought made him shiver, but he shook it off. He focused on the path ahead. Soon, the narrow gap opened into a small canyon. The walls were high, jagged, and covered with scorch marks. The floor was littered with more metallic debris. The cowboy felt his boots crunch against the shards. He had to be careful not to cut himself. The dragons moved gracefully, stepping over the obstacles without effort. The baby stumbled occasionally, but the mother was quick to correct it, nudging it gently with her snout or wing. The cowboy noticed more things now. Strange symbols etched into some of the larger pieces of metal, glowing faintly in the moonlight. He had no idea what they meant. He didn't understand the language, the shapes, or the purpose, but something about them felt intentional. Someone or something had made these designs for a reason. As they moved deeper into the canyon, the air grew warmer. He realized the desert chill from earlier was gone, replaced by a strange, soft heat. The ground beneath his boots hummed faintly, barely. Noticeable at first, then stronger with every step. He stopped and looked around. The mother dragon froze too, ears flicking, nostrils flaring. The baby whimpered softly, sensing the tension. The cowboy crouched slightly, scanning the rocks and sand. He couldn't see anything moving, but the humming was undeniable. It felt alive, not like wind or animals, but like some machine with a heartbeat. He felt a thrill of fear mixed with curiosity. Whatever this place was, it was bigger than him, older than him, and clearly connected to these dragons. The mother dragon stepped forward again, as if sensing that the danger was minimal, or that he could handle it. Her glowing eyes never left him. She nudged the baby along, and the small creature moved more confidently this time. The cowboy followed closely, careful to mirror their pace. He felt like he was walking into a story no human had ever known, and yet he had been chosen to witness it. Finally, they reached the center of the canyon, and there it was, another wreck, much larger than the first, half buried in the sand. Smoke or heat radiated from it, but faintly, almost like it was dying. The shape was strange, unlike any wagon, carriage, or building he had ever seen. Parts of it were jagged, other parts smooth. The metal seemed almost alive, pulsing faintly, as if it had a slow, steady heartbeat. The baby dragon let out a weak squeak and pressed against its mother. She growled softly, low and protective, making sure the cowboy stayed back. He did. He could see inside a broken section of the wreck and noticed shapes that moved faintly. Small, delicate forms. He didn't understand what they were yet, but he sensed life. The mother dragon made another rumbling sound, glancing at him and then at the wreck. Her message was clear. She wanted him to see it, but stay careful. She trusted him, but only so much. It was up to him to respect her rules. He nodded silently and moved closer, crouching to get a better view. Whatever had happened here was beyond anything he had ever seen. The wreck wasn't just metal. It seemed almost organic, as if it had been alive once. He reached out carefully, touching a piece of cool metal. The vibrations under his fingers were subtle, but unmistakable. Something had lived here. Something strange. Something dangerous, perhaps, but also innocent. The mother dragon let out a long, soft rumble. The baby moved slightly, wings trembling. The cowboy felt a sense of awe wash over him. He was in the presence of something beyond imagination. And yet, the creatures he had helped had trusted him. They believed he could handle this. He exhaled slowly, looking around. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if the night would bring more danger or more mysteries. But he knew one thing. He would follow the dragons, no matter what. He had already saved a life tonight, and he wouldn't stop now. The mother dragon nudged her child forward, and together they stepped closer to the wreck. The cowboy followed, keeping just enough distance to respect their space. The canyon walls echoed their quiet steps, the hum of the wreck, and the faint sounds of the dragon's breathing. It was a night unlike any he had ever experienced, and he knew he would never forget it. The cowboy followed the mother dragon and her young deeper into the canyon. The air grew warmer as they approached the wreck. Sparks of light flickered faintly from cracks in the metal, and a soft humming sound, like a slow heartbeat, filled the air. Every step he took, the desert seemed to grow quieter, almost as if it was watching him, holding its breath along with the creatures. The mother dragon paused, her eyes glowing softly in the moonlight, and let out a low rumble that vibrated through the air. The baby pressed close to her side, wings trembling slightly, but seemed reassured by her presence. The cowboy understood that she was telling him, silently, to be careful. One wrong move could startle her or her child, and he did not want that. He moved slowly, keeping his hands visible, careful not to make sudden gestures. He could see now that the wreck was massive, much bigger than the first one they had found. Twisted metal and broken panels jutted out at strange angles. Some of the panels glowed faintly, as if the heat hadn't completely gone. Strange symbols were etched along the edges, glowing softly. He had no idea what they meant, but they felt important, as if they carried a message from a world he had never seen. The baby dragon made a weak squeak, and the mother nudged it gently with her snout, encouraging it to move forward. He watched her actions carefully. Every movement she made was deliberate. She was teaching the young one how to navigate this dangerous place. The cowboy realized that in many ways this was similar to how humans cared for their children. Patience, guidance, and protection, no matter the species. The feelings were the same. He crouched to get a closer look at the wreck. The metal was smooth in some areas and jagged in others, with pieces that seemed to have melted and hardened again. He could see that part of the structure had collapsed, trapping something inside. He could hear soft noises, almost like tiny whimpers, coming from beneath the metal. The baby dragon's eyes widened, and it let out a tiny hiss. The mother growled softly, protective, making sure the cowboy understood not to rush forward. Cowboy took a deep breath and examined the scene. He could see that the trapped creature was small, weaker than the baby dragon, and clearly struggling. Heat radiated from the metal, and he knew he had to be careful. He looked around for something to help lift the debris. A jagged piece of metal nearby seemed solid enough. He picked it up cautiously, careful not to touch the hotter areas. The weight was heavy, but he managed to maneuver it under the trapped creature. The mother dragon let out a low rumble, soft and almost approving, as if she understood what he was trying to do. The baby pressed closer to her side, watching him. Carefully, he pushed slowly, leaning his body against the beam, feeling the vibrations through his arms. The metal shifted slightly, and the small creature inside gave a weak squeak of relief. Encouraged, he adjusted his position and pushed harder. Finally, with a loud groan of metal against metal, the trapped piece moved just enough for the small creature to wiggle free. It scrambled out, weak and trembling, and the baby dragon let out a joyful squeak. The mother stepped forward, her wings flaring slightly, and helped guide the creature toward her. She nudged it gently, checking it for injuries. The cowboy stepped back, giving her space, his chest tight with relief. He could see now that the creature was another young dragon, smaller than the first, still vulnerable and frightened. The mother circled both of them protectively, making soft rumbling noises that seemed to soothe the babies. The cowboy watched in awe, feeling a mixture of relief and amazement. He had never seen such a display of care and intelligence in creatures so unlike humans, yet so familiar in emotion. The air in the canyon grew warmer still, and he noticed faint sparks flying from the wreck, small flashes of light that reflected off the walls. The heat radiated in waves, and he had to take a step back to avoid touching the glowing metal. He realized that whatever had caused this crash had been powerful, something beyond anything he had ever encountered in the desert. Yet here were the dragons, survivors, guiding him to understand their world. As if trusting him to help, the mother dragon nudged her babies gently and looked at him. Her glowing eyes seemed to ask a question. Could he continue? Could he help them navigate this dangerous place? He nodded, keeping his hands visible. She understood. The baby dragons pressed close, and together they moved cautiously toward the next part of the wreck dot. As they moved, the cowboy noticed more strange fragments scattered across the canyon floor. Some were small, sharp shards of metal. Others were larger pieces with odd markings. He picked up a fragment, turning it over in his hand. The surface was smooth and warm, and the strange symbols glowed faintly. He felt a strange connection, a feeling that these objects had a story to tell. The mother dragon made a soft rumble, encouraging him to keep moving. The baby dragons followed, guided by her careful movements. The cowboy stayed close, observing everything. He realized that this journey was about more than just survival. It was about trust, understanding, and connection. The dragons had trusted him to help their young. Now he had to continue that trust, step by step, carefully, and without rushing. They reached another section of the wreck, larger and more twisted than before. A section of metal had collapsed, forming a small barrier that blocked the path. The humming sound grew louder here, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The cowboy crouched, examining the metal, feeling the heat. He realized he would need more leverage to move it. He looked around and found a sturdy rock, flat and strong. Using it as a wedge, he tried to lift the debris slowly. The mother dragon watched closely, her eyes following his every movement. The babies pressed close to her side, trembling slightly, but they didn't panic. The cowboy gritted his teeth, pushing with all his strength. The metal shifted slightly, then more, and finally, a small opening appeared. Through the opening, he could see movement. Another small creature, trapped but alive. Its breathing was weak, and it tried to push itself free. The cowboy adjusted his position and used the metal beam to lift the debris further. Sweat ran down his face, and his arms ached, but he didn't stop. The mother dragon let out a soft, approving rumble. She understood he was trying, and she trusted him. Finally, the trapped creature managed to wriggle free. It scrambled forward, small and vulnerable, and the baby dragons squeaked in excitement. The mother stepped forward, nudging all of them together, checking for injuries. She made low, soothing sounds, circling them protectively. The cowboy stepped back, giving them space. He felt a wave of relief and wonder. He had helped save lives tonight, and these creatures had shown him a trust he had never known before. The canyon was quiet again, except for the soft humming of the wreck and the rumbling of the dragons. The cowboy looked around, feeling the warmth of the night and the strange energy in the air. He realized that this was only the beginning. Whatever had brought these dragons here, whatever had caused the wreck, there was more to discover. The mother dragon nudged her babies, and they followed her movements, circling him briefly, as if acknowledging him before moving forward again. He understood. They were guiding him, showing him the path, trusting him to follow carefully. He nodded, keeping his hands visible and his movements slow. The canyon stretched ahead, dark and mysterious, but the dragons moved with purpose. The cowboy followed, step by step, feeling the connection growing stronger. He was no longer just a traveler in the desert. He was part of something bigger, something beyond his understanding. The dragons trusted him, and he would honor that trust as they moved deeper into the canyon. He felt a mixture of awe and anticipation. The night was filled with unknown dangers, but also with incredible discoveries. He knew that whatever awaited them, he would face it carefully, patiently, and with respect. The mother dragon, her babies, and the strange, humming wreck were guiding him into a world he had never imagined, and he would follow them, step by step, into the unknown. The cowboy followed the mother dragon and her young deeper into the canyon, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. The moonlight illuminated the jagged walls, casting strange shadows across the ground, and the air felt thick and heavy, as if the canyon itself were alive. The soft hum from the wreck continued, steady and rhythmic, almost like the heartbeat of something that had once lived. Every step he took, he felt a mix of fear, awe, and curiosity, but the trust he had earned from the dragons gave him courage. The mother dragon moved gracefully, despite the injury she carried from the crash. Her wings twitched slightly as she navigated over broken metal and sharp rocks, guiding her babies carefully. The smaller one followed closely, stumbling now and then, but never straying far from her side. The cowboy felt a deep respect for the bond they shared. He had seen love and care in humans and animals before, but this was something entirely new. These creatures, so different from him, had instincts and emotions that were familiar in their intensity. He adjusted his coat and wiped dust from his hands. He had learned from the first rescue that patience was the key. Hasty actions could have caused the dragons to panic. He made sure his steps were careful, quiet, and predictable. The mother dragon glanced back at him periodically, her eyes glowing softly in the moonlight, making sure he understood that he was part of their journey now, but that he must respect their rules. The canyon floor began to slope upward, and the cowboy noticed that the wreckage around them grew larger and more complex. Twisted metal sheets jutted out at odd angles, and the glowing symbols etched along some panels pulsed faintly. Sparks flickered occasionally from cracks, sending tiny lights across the canyon walls. The hum of energy was stronger here, vibrating through the air and making the hairs on his arms stand up. He had no idea what he was walking into, but he trusted the dragons. The mother nudged her babies forward again. They moved slowly, careful to avoid sharp edges, and the cowboy followed. As they approached a particularly narrow passage, he realized that something deeper in the wreck had shifted. The air grew hotter, and the hum of energy became louder, steady, and persistent. He crouched, peering around a twisted metal panel, and saw movement inside. Another small creature, trapped under more debris, was struggling weakly. Its breathing was shallow, and it let out a faint cry that sent a shiver through him. The cowboy's heart tightened. He had rescued 2 of the young dragons already, and now this one needed him too. He looked at the mother dragon, who made a soft rumbling sound. It wasn't anger or warning. It was reassurance. She was telling him that he could help this one as well, but he had to be careful. The baby dragons pressed close to her, sensing the tension, but they didn't panic. He scanned the debris for a solution. A large metal beam lay nearby, partially buried in the sand. He tested its weight, finding it heavy but manageable. The heat radiating from the wreck was intense, and he knew he had to be cautious to avoid burning himself. He positioned the beam under the debris, taking care to avoid sharp edges, and used his full strength to lift it slowly. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with the dust and grime of the canyon floor. The trapped creature gave a weak squeak as the metal shifted. Encouraged, the cowboy pushed harder, feeling the vibrations through his arms. Sparks flew from the edges of the debris as it moved, but he didn't stop. Step by step, he adjusted the beam, inching the metal away from the small body beneath. The mother dragon watched closely, her glowing eyes fixed on him, making sure he didn't rush or make a sudden move. Finally, the debris shifted enough for the creature to wriggle free. It scrambled forward, trembling, and the baby dragon squeaked in excitement. The mother stepped forward immediately, circling the rescued creature and nudging it gently, checking for injuries. The cowboy took a step back, giving them space, and felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had helped save another life tonight, and the dragon's trust in him seemed to deepen with every successful rescue. The canyon was quiet again, save for the steady hum from the wreck and the soft rumbling of the dragons. The air was warm and heavy, and the faint glow from the metal illuminated the creatures as they regrouped. The mother dragon nudged her babies toward the center of the canyon, and the cowboy followed slowly. He could see that the creatures were forming a small group, with the mother at the center and the babies close around her. Safe for the moment, he took a deep breath, realizing that the journey was far from over. There was more wreckage to explore, more mysteries to uncover, and possibly more creatures that needed help. But for now, he allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. He had done something meaningful tonight, something that went beyond his usual life of cattle drives and long desert trails. He had saved lives, earned trust, and witnessed something extraordinary. As he stood there, the mother dragon lifted her head and let out a low, steady rumble. It wasn't a roar. It wasn't a threat. It was a sound of acknowledgement, gratitude, and connection. The baby dragons huddled closer, their small bodies trembling slightly, but their eyes followed him with curiosity. The cowboy realized that this simple moment of communication, this unspoken understanding between human and dragons, was more powerful than anything he had ever experienced. He scanned the wreckage again. The glow from the metal was stronger in some areas, suggesting that there might be more survivors trapped inside. The canyon walls echoed faintly with the hum, and he could feel it in his chest. It was almost like the canyon itself was alive, aware of every movement, every decision. He glanced at the mother dragon, and she made a small, approving sound, encouraging him to continue. The cowboy adjusted his grip on the metal beam he had been using and moved forward carefully. He had learned to respect the dragon's space, and he continued to work without rushing. Each movement was deliberate, slow, and controlled. Sparks flew occasionally as he shifted debris, but the dragons did not flinch. They had learned to trust him, just as he had learned to trust them. Eventually, he reached a section of the wreck that was larger and more complex than anything he had seen before. Large panels of twisted metal blocked the path, and the hum of energy was louder here, vibrating through the ground and air. The mother dragon stepped forward slightly, wings spread just enough to guide her babies safely. She glanced at him, eyes glowing as if asking if he was ready. He nodded, using the beam and a nearby rock for leverage. He pushed the debris slowly. The metal resisted at first, but he kept his strength steady, careful not to rush. The humming grew louder, almost like a heartbeat quickening with anticipation. Sweat dripped down his face, and his arms ached, but he didn't stop. The trapped creature beneath finally wriggled free, small and fragile, but alive. The baby dragons squeaked in excitement, and the mother stepped forward to nuzzle the rescued one gently. The canyon was quiet again, save for the soft rumbling of the dragons and the faint hum from the wreck. The cowboy stepped back, watching them regroup. The mother dragon nudged her babies toward the center, and the rescued creatures huddled around her, safe for the moment. He realized that he had earned their trust completely. They no longer needed to warn him or guide him cautiously. They accepted him as part of their journey. He took a deep breath and looked around the canyon. The wreck still held mysteries, glowing metal, and strange hums, but for now, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He had saved lives tonight, guided by creatures that no human had ever imagined. He had faced the unknown, and he had come. Through with respect, patience, and care, the mother dragon let out a low, steady rumble, and the baby dragons pressed close to her. The cowboy realized that this simple act of communication, this unspoken connection, was more meaningful than anything he had ever known. He had helped them survive, and in return, they had shared something extraordinary with him: trust, understanding, and a glimpse of a world beyond his own. The night stretched on, quiet and mysterious. The canyon, the wreck, and the dragons formed a strange, magical space where human and creatures could coexist, trust, and care for one another. The cowboy knew that whatever came next, he would continue to follow carefully, respecting their space and honoring the trust they had placed. In him, the journey was far from over, but he was ready. The mother dragon, her babies, and the strange, glowing wreck had taught him something important. Courage, patience, and empathy could bridge worlds that seemed impossible to connect. And as he moved forward with them, step by careful step, he knew that he was witnessing a story that few humans would ever see, yet one he would never forget.